Happy New Year. Welcome to the first episode of 2022 of So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. Guys, how's it going? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year, same dumpster fires. That's where I'm at today.
Always the optimist, John. I love it. On today's episode, we're talking about email marketing. And so the reason we wanted to talk about email marketing, it's one of those topics that is, number one, it's always worth revisiting because there's, you know, no shortage of things to be thinking about with your email marketing. But today, we're talking about email marketing because with the new year comes lots of new jobs. People are moving, they've changed their email address. And we wanted to talk about some list hygiene best practices. We wanted to talk about, sort of the new year, new jobs. What does that mean for your subscriber numbers? And then how to re-engage those people. And so that's where we're going to focus today. So again, feel free to drop comments and questions into the channel, and we'll definitely try to get to all of them. But so Chris, with email marketing, knowing that email is the thing that you are the most excited about when it comes to digital marketing, what do we need to know about, new year, new jobs? Everyone's changing jobs, emails are bouncing. How do we re-engage people? Where do we start?
There's three things that we need to do in order to make our email marketing effective. Number one is, and this is something that's really important. This is the Trust Insights newsletter, which you can get at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. And you will notice that in the production version, which is on the right, there's a big red unsubscribe here, right? We put this very near the top, and there's also another one we put down at the bottom in case, for people who are looking for that. Make it easy for people to get off your list. When you're sending out emails to folks on your list and someone's moved on for not a shorter period of time, what happens at a lot of organizations is that email is then forwarded to that person's boss or whatever. And again, we want to make it easy for people to get off the newsletter list. So if somebody's boss is getting this newsletter, like, I don't really want this thing, we don't want them to hit the spam button. We don't want to hit them hitting the report spam. We want to make it easy and obvious for them to just yeet themselves off the list. And to the extent that they can do that with big, obvious calls to action, that's the way we're going to go. So that is by far number one. And I think the easiest thing that every marketer should be looking at.
It's interesting because I think we definitely approach it differently than a lot of other email newsletters, and I can't, I'm not going to think of any off the top of my head, but as someone who gets a lot of email newsletters and sometimes ones that I didn't sign up for, I struggle to find the unsubscribe button. And I feel like there's some fear and insecurity with making it easy for people to opt out, because then the idea is like, well, then people will start to opt out. Well, guess what? That's okay. It's okay if people say, I don't want this, because it could be for a variety of reasons. One, you may need to produce better content to bring people back in, or two, to your point, Chris, maybe they're leaving their job and it's just not relevant to them anymore.
Well, think about this. Every week, what do we do? One of the things that I report to you as the CEO is the number of email newsletter subscribers, right? That is a marketing metric we pay attention to. And in an organization that is perhaps not as collaborative as we are, you'd be afraid to publish a loss. Like, hey, Katie, I'm going to go clean the list, and I can guarantee you we're going to lose 1,000 subscribers, right? You probably would not find that welcome news, particularly in a less collaborative organization.
You're absolutely right. And, to be completely transparent and honest, we do see, a loss of a couple of hundred people week over week because we do very diligently clean the list. And we know that a lot of the emails that are being lost are people who have switched jobs, emails that have bounced, emails that are invalid, a lot of, test@test.com, which we don't want in our database anyway, because then the number of bounces will then affect our deliverability. So I'm of the opinion that I would rather have the right people reading the thing and a smaller number than this mass, newsletter that goes out to a bunch of anonymous people who never really understand what the content is.
Exactly. So that's number one, is make it easier for people to leave. Number two, and probably I think one of the most important things that, again, we forget to do, is take a look at your metrics, right? So this is the attribution analysis. This is the December analysis for Trust Insights. And when we look at the top channels that create conversions for us, and for us, conversion is typically a form fill because we're a B2B company. Email is a sizable chunk of those top conversions, right? It's 75% of our conversions. And so for us, then, list cleanliness and re-engagement are top priorities, right? If email was 2%, they'd be like, okay, maybe that goes on the we'll get to it list. But when it's the majority or the vast majority of your conversions, it's like, you can't get to it whenever it's a priority. So, step two is take a look at your overall metrics. And then once you've looked at your overall metrics, go into whatever email marketing software you use. This I use, for example, and we use as a company, AWS. We use Amazon Simple Email Service. And one of the things that they tell you is that you can look at your bounce rate and your complaint rate. And these two numbers tell you about the health of your list. Your bounce rate is the number of emails that just says that this email no longer exists. Stop sending email to it. And your complaint rate is the number of people who hit that report spam button. And Amazon gives us this data in real time as we send out emails, so we can look at it and go, okay, how are we doing? So our rates here are they're basically almost zero across the board. So from a health perspective, this is good. This is what we want to see. If you look at their basic dashboard, they tell you. So for bounces, you're at a warning level of 5%, right? If 5% of your list bounces, you're in danger. If 10% of your list bounces, Amazon may suspend us from being able to send emails. When you look at our complaint rates, 0.1% is your warning and 0.5% is your account at risk. So again, these are sort of a nice little dashboard. And most marketing automation software, most email marketing software will have something like this, but the onus is on us as marketers to check it and say, okay, how close are we to that line?
So it's funny because you started by saying that the number that you report to me as the CEO is the total number of subscribers, which I think is, an important metric. But this information to me is much more valuable because, again, we could have, 100 million subscribers to the newsletter. But if all of these metrics are saying that we're doing it wrong, we're reaching the wrong people, it's bouncing, we're spamming people, that's more important to me. So I always put quality over quantity.
Exactly. And so again, these measures, bounce rate and complaint rate, are two things you very much want to look at to understand the hygiene of your list, right? Because these are things that are either the address is bad or the person just, not only do they not want it, they're not willing to go through the process of unsubscribing. They're attempting to punish us, the marketer, for emailing them. So we want to keep an eye on these things. So those are the diagnostics. The next thing that I would suggest that you do for cleaning your list is there's sort of two stages to the cleaning process. One, there's easy stuff that you can fix, right? So if you look in your email marketing software, and we can't show this obviously because it would be showing people's identifiable information on screen, which would be bad. There are things like when someone's typing in their email address, like writing GMIAL instead of gmail.com, and silly misspellings from major ISPs. Part of your cleanup, and this is something that should be done on a regular and frequent basis, is go into your software and clean your list of the easy stuff, right? So misspelling Hotmail, misspelling AOL, misspelling Outlook.com, any of those things where there are known variations that are wrong, go in and fix them. With our stuff, we actually have a piece of software that's automated that does it automatically, so it autocorrects it. But that's one of the things you can do in an Excel spreadsheet, right? You can just look for bad domains and fix them as you go through.
All right, John, hot seat. How many of these things are you doing with the marketing over coffee email list?
Yeah, we're actually, the marketing over coffee list is pretty solid. I have to, put out there that Digital is our support on that front. So we have a reputable vendor. And I think that's one of my biggest complaints based on what we've kicked out so far is, it's not 2006 anymore. If somebody unsubscribes, they should be off the lists within a day or two. Like I've seen too many of these systems still where you unsubscribe and you get some kind of thing that says, okay, yeah, the mailings will stop in about a week or so, maybe longer. And that's just ridiculous. And that will go straight to your complaints, because you know that if you unsubscribe and you keep getting emails for over the next 5 days, your odds of getting spam reports go through the roof on that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're pretty solid on that front. The bigger problem is we're just not creating the content fast enough. That's the bottleneck for us. The like many marketing organization, we've spent all we need on the tools. We're just not doing the hard work of actually taking advantage of the stuff. So, but yeah, no, compliance is not a problem, at least.
So we know your 2022 goals now.
Yeah, right. Content calendar and actually execute.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing you can do, and I think it's a good idea to do, is on a regular basis, but not necessarily a frequent basis, consider using any one of a gazillion different services to audit your list and see what condition it's in. So this is one, I use one called Million Verifier, but there's Zero Bounce, Never Bounce, Hublico. There's so many different vendors out there. And what you do is you load your email list to these services, and they test the addresses. They see, okay, is this working? Is this an address that looks like a role address, like info at, for example, would be a catch-all or a role address? Is the deliverability status unknown? And then the most important ones, which are the ones that are invalid? They're just flat out not working. I would say, depending on going back to your attribution model, when we look at that model, if you're under 10% of your conversions are coming from email, then maybe clean your list like once a year, right? Because your software should be doing some cleaning throughout the year. So maybe you just do a big health check once a year. If your conversions from email are over 50%, you probably want to be doing this like quarterly. Doing big cleans quarterly, because even though, again, like somebody's address may or may not, may stop working at some point, it may not result in as big a notification or a certain error type that would tell the software, hey, take this off. So a cleaning service is likely to be able to help identify it and go, okay, it's probably let's remove this address. And again, because of the frequency that we send email and how much of it we rely on, we actually clean our list every week. Every week it gets a cleaning to make sure we're knocking stuff out. But again, 75% of our conversions come from it, so it's kind of a necessity at this point.
Makes sense. So the next, part of this conversation is sort of the new year, new jobs, which brings us to a question from our friend Brian, who covers up John's face. Happy New Year. When is the right time for a new business to launch an email newsletter? How big an audience should you have, or how much existing content do you need to have on your site? I think when we launched the Trust Insights newsletter, we didn't have baked in subscribers. We created the newsletter and started with a very small pool, and then that's grown over time. If I recall, we launched our newsletter not long after we launched the company. And so it was probably, mid-April or something. So I don't think you need to wait for a specific time, much like, starting your fitness journey or learning a new skill or whatever. You don't need to wait for the calendar to say January 1st. I think you can start whenever it makes sense, whenever you feel ready to do the thing. But Chris, again, where this is your bailiwick, what's your advice here for Brian?
It's exactly what you just said, Kate. The best time to start a newsletter was a year ago, right? But today is a great day to start an email newsletter.
That's right.
Even if you have 5 subscribers, right? It's still a great day to do that, because one of the things, and this is kind of a fun little tidbit, one of the things is that you're creating content, right? And that content can be repurposed. In August of last year, we sort of had our own why are we making things harder than they have to be, and we started putting every issue of our newsletter on our website, on the blog, right? It was just yet another blog post. And then we modified the view in browser snippet to basically just go to the blog post. So if people wanted to read it on the web, they did look right on their phones, whatever, just tap through. And you would think, okay, everybody's reading the newsletter, great, just check that box. Our website traffic went like 40%, literally overnight, right? On a weekly basis, our website went out that fast because actually a lot of people do want to read it on the web instead of, in whatever email client they're writing. So if you are starting with a small list, right, that's fine. If you publish to 5 people and you then repurpose the content and put it on your blog, or maybe you read it aloud and you put it on YouTube or whatever, you will get a lot of mileage out of it. And because it's available on your blog, you will continue to get mileage out of it. And when new people join your community, if the back issues are available, then you will drive even more value from the older content because people want to check to see, what were you writing about last year and things like that. So as long as your content's good, start that newsletter as fast as you can.
I would also add to that, you don't need to have a big giant newsletter. You can start smaller and build on it. So maybe, your first quarter of newsletter issues is this one blog post that you wrote and you want to share it. And then here's a small announcement of like what's coming next. Great, that's all you need. Just keep people informed and then start building on it and build out more sections as it's being asked for and as you're finding that kind of content on your website is being shared. So, we look at our newsletter as an opportunity to reshare a lot of existing content, or we take the content, as Chris said, from our newsletter and turn that content into blog posts. So the cold open that I do becomes its own separate blog post. The data diaries that Chris does becomes its own separate blog post. So we've now used it 4 different ways. 1, it's an email newsletter. 2, the email newsletter in its whole is a blog post. 3, the cold open becomes a blog post to be shared a few weeks later. 4, the data diaries becomes its own blog post to be shared a few weeks after that. So we've done the work once and we now get 4 pieces of content out of it.
5 if we're really clever and we put it all together as an ebook at the end of each year too, which is on our to-do list at some point.
I was going to say, we're not that clever.
Yeah, well, we're that clever. We're just not that well resourced.
All right, I'll add that to the list.
Exactly. The other thing that I think is really important about this content is something that Ann Handley says. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. And she says, when companies talk about newsletters, there's an overemphasis on the news part and an underemphasis on the letter part. And even if you don't have a lot of content or a lot of big flashy stuff, you can still write a letter to a friend, right? Everybody can write a letter to a friend. You're writing an email to a friend. A lot of your cold opens, Katie, essentially read like that, like you're writing a letter to one of us. And so you can do that today with nothing else, no other prep. Just write a letter to a friend saying, hey, here's what's going on. Would love to know what you're thinking and what's working for you, and so on and so forth. And that is a totally appropriate type of newsletter. It actually resonates really well. Some of the best responses we've gotten on our Trust Insights newsletter is from people saying, Katie, I really enjoyed that cold open. It really resonated with me. So that's a great starting point.
Thank you. I always try to, think about that cold open as, that's exactly it. If I were talking to one person and telling them a little bit about what's going on in my life and a little bit about what's going on with the company and then the reason why I'm telling them and why it's relevant. So it's not just me just talking about myself, but here's the reason why I feel like you would benefit from hearing this information about what's going on.
Exactly. So those would be the things to look at. So of what to do with a new newsletter, right? It's relatively straightforward stuff. Again, this is not rocket surgery. We've been writing letters to each other for centuries.
Mm-hmm. So John, when you do the Marketing Over Coffee newsletter, are you going to start writing letters to me and Chris?
No, the pattern there is solid. It's the big thing that it's made up of is the same thing that you guys are talking about. You take the quality content. Over the case of the month, we'll pick the 2 best things we found to feature, and that's the cornerstone of that. It's really just 2 big links. And there's the intro, which is the personal note. There is kind of a here's what's going on this month and where you need to be. But the big thing is to just kind of give a quick menu of 4 or 5 links that, this is what we think the best stuff of the month was. And so it's really staying in front of people every month. You want to have something out there so that you just become top to mind again. And you just get another one of those impressions. So when the time comes that somebody is thinking about who do I call about analytics or podcasting or marketing attribution, hey, just last week I was reading this thing from Trust Insights, or I just heard this podcast, this guest on Marketing Over Coffee, and you stay involved in someone's life on a regular basis. It's really all about that, just continued touch.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think is important there is repetition's okay, right? One of the things that we have found, I've certainly seen this with my own newsletter, is people will write back and say, "Oh, I missed this, this thing." I'm like, "It's been in the last 7 issues. How could you possibly miss it?" But because our attention has gotten so fragmented, you have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and stuff, and then you have Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus. You have so many things vying for the audience's attention, and so many recommendation engines filtering out everything people see, that just because you posted it on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever doesn't mean people saw it. Even putting it in the same newsletter doesn't guarantee people see it. I have seen really good results. One of the things we do is we track different links being clicked inside newsletters. And I'm amazed at the number of people who will click on a link deeper down in the newsletter for something that was featured at the top of the newsletter, because it's the same piece of content, and it's like, was the first one not clear enough? I was at the top of the newsletter in big, bold letters. But no, that's the way attention works. There's so little of it that if you're worried about, like, oh, should I put this in my newsletter? People seen it. No one's seen it.
Well, and to your point, Chris, where we started, you start the newsletter after the cold open with an unsubscribe button. And then further on down is where the traditionally an unsubscribe button is, but you've repeated it so that people can't say, I couldn't find your unsubscribe button, or I missed it, or I didn't see it.
Exactly. If you can't find the unsubscribe button, you may want to see a medical professional. Okay, Katie, what's the third thing on our list?
Reengaging subscribers. So much like building your subscriber list, as you're cleaning your list like we do week over week, or if you're doing it less frequently, you're going to lose subscribers. So the question then becomes, how do I get those people back? And so there's a couple of things to think about. One, did they leave? Are you giving them that exit survey of why are they leaving? They don't like this content. It's not relevant. I'm leaving this job. So if you have that exit survey data, then you have a better idea of who you can try to re-engage with. And then the other side of that is just making sure that people have a really easy way to subscribe to your newsletter. Making sure it's not an overly complicated URL like trustinsights.ai/content/resources/ Chris Penn /John Wall /Katie /newsletter subscribe /thank you. Make sure it's not something that people can't figure out. Even if you have to just create one of those vanity URLs, make sure it's something simple like newsletter. And so the other thing you want to do with that is, as people move around the internet, so if they've moved jobs, if they've moved, email addresses, whatever the thing is, making sure that you are reminding them of the newsletter across all different platforms. And so even if it's a quick, hey, did you know that we still have a newsletter? Here's a super easy way to subscribe to it. Or, hey, it looks like you changed jobs. How's everything going? We miss you around, Trust Insights. You can still catch up with us on our newsletter. And it doesn't have to be a pressured thing, but, as people are switching jobs and having life events, the last thing they're probably thinking of is, oh, I unsubscribed from Trust Insights newsletter. Let me make sure that the first thing I do is resubscribe to it. So it's your job as the owner of the content to remind people that you exist.
Exactly. I think that point you made is really important. So this is my personal newsletter, and one of the things that I have here is, why are you leaving? right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting too much email. It's not valuable. I don't work in marketing anymore. I can't view it on my device. I didn't subscribe in the first place. All these things are things that you'd want to ask somebody. And then from time to time, load up the stats software of your choice, Excel, Tableau, whatever, and just count up what are you getting. Now, if you're getting a whole bunch of people saying like, I no longer work in marketing, okay, that's job change. If you get, I don't find the content valuable, that's probably a pretty good clear sign that you need to do some work, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm no longer interested in the content, okay, that's a topic change. So some kind of exit interview is useful, and not everybody's going to fill this out, right?
Sure.
I also recommend, and that's something I actually need to do on my own site, is put a dummy variable at the front. It says like I was attacked by a duck, because what a lot of people will do is they will just choose whatever the default first choice is, and that if someone chooses I was attacked by a duck, that they didn't actually read the question.
All I can think now is those like now ducks are going to get a bad rep for suddenly attacking all kinds of people across the internet.
um, and then winning them back, again, one of those things that if you are approaching marketing as sort of an integrated thing, you can run social ads to people who've been to your website. You can run retargeting ads to people who've been to your website. You can run YouTube ads to people who've been to your website, and remind people that you've got this newsletter and what it's about. You can put together a quick 30-second spot or 15-second pre-roll for YouTube or whatever, something that will remind people that the newsletter exists and that there's something in it for them. And you may not get back everybody, right? You may not even get back, 10% of the people, but if you can get back 10% of the right people, great.
Mm-hmm.
If you get back 10% of your decision makers, that's not a bad thing to do. And the other thing that is super important is ask people. Again, going back to the Trust Insights newsletter, one of the things that we fixed last year, because cobbler's kids have no shoes, is right under the unsubscribe. Hey, if you really like this, please share it with a colleague, right? And telling people, hey, here's if you think there's value in this, share it with a colleague, and being able to help people help you. I'm amazed at the number of newsletters, my own included, that didn't do this. That is like, okay, this is a kind of an obvious best practice, but yet it's not obvious. Or if it is in there, again, it's not prominent. It deserves the same billing as your unsubscribe, right? There's, I really don't like you and I'm leaving, or I really like you, how can I bring my friends? And those things should be on equal footing.
I want to go back to something you said as you're re-engaging people is the value. What are they getting out of it? And so this is true of any kind of content that you're creating. A lot of times, sort of to go back to Brian's question about, when is the right time for a new business to launch an email newsletter? Well, why do you need an email newsletter? What is it going to do for your company? What is it going to do for your customers? It's the same question you should be asking yourself about your social media channels. What's the purpose? It's the same question you should be asking yourself about your blog. What purpose does it serve? That's where you should start before you launch an email newsletter. So for us, we want to engage, we use it as our engagement part of the funnel. And so it's people who know of us, they know a little bit about us. And so we use it as an opportunity to maybe educate them a little bit more about what we do, who we are, and also the things that we find interesting. So we share with them, here are the articles that we think you should be reading this week about this particular industry and this particular topic. So we try to make it not completely about us and what we're doing, but also what's happening in the industry so that we can share those resources that we think people should care about. And that's the value that we try to provide through our email newsletter. And so for you, it might be something different. It might be just like, hey, here's what's going on with us. Thanks, bye. And that's it. Or it's an opportunity to feature partners, or it's an opportunity to do, whatever the purpose is, but make sure you're clear on what that purpose is, and then it becomes easier to re-engage people.
Exactly. And if you're not clear what the purpose is, ask people. Send out a one-question survey saying, hey, what would you like to get from us in your inbox? What extra value could we provide? What are some burning questions you have that we can help you answer? And then give people what they ask for. Again, none of this stuff is like secret or rocket surgery or anything like that. It is just a question of being having the capability of doing it, and then actually doing it. So a lot of the time, when companies fail to do it, it's because they don't actually want to talk to the customer, because the customer will tell them that actually they suck. And in less collaborative, more fear-driven organizations, nobody wants to hear that they suck. They just want to hear everything is sunshine and roses. And surveys typically don't get floated to the audience unless to a select group of people who you're guaranteed to get a response for, so that you don't get fired. If you work at an organization that is honest, then sending out those surveys is really important, because you will get a glimpse at, oh, people actually want to hear more about this, right? Last year when we sent out our one question survey, there's a whole bunch of folks who said, I need to know more about Google Analytics 4. So we spent a lot of podcasts and live streams and stuff on Google Analytics 4. We're doing a premium course with marketing profs next week on it. This year, when we send out our surveys, we're going to be asking the same thing, like, what do you want more out of? And we'll see what people say. We'll see what's on people's minds, and then we'll do our best to give it to them.
So, John, question for you. Marketing over coffee organization, collaborative or fear-based?
Oh, absolutely fear-based, for God's sake. That's everything motivated around, you're going to end up in a dumpster next week. So what are you going to do about it today? On the other end of that spectrum is, I have to give a shout out for Arnold Schwarzenegger's newsletter. He's done an email newsletter that is just ridiculous. It's like
really good.
It's a full-on magazine and it's obvious that there's like a PR team of 12 that are putting this thing together, because there's like 10 custom YouTube videos in the thing. But to tap a point that you hit, Katie, and Chris mentioned too, about the third one I got, I was like, my brother will love this. Let me forward it to him. And there's no link in there to forward or to pass on or to, like, I couldn't even figure out how I signed up for it originally and couldn't get there. So it's, you even with a team of 12 doing it, there's still gotchas in there that you got to look out for.
Exactly. And I think that, one of the things that, a lot of people do sort of, cleanses of all kinds this time of year. And one of the things that I've seen people mention is, doing a digital detox and unsubscribing from newsletters that they don't really read anymore. You want to make sure you're not on that list. And the easiest way to make sure you're not on that list is to make sure that people find value in what you send. If you were to, this is a fun thought exercise, I think it's an important one. If you were to close your inbox and stuff, and then try to remember the newsletters you actually enjoy reading. How many of them, of the ones you get, how many of them actually make that list? I can think of, not counting my own and the company's, 3, right? And I know I get many more than 3, but there are 3 like, okay, when this comes in, I am going to read this, right? Because this is really important. And the rest is like, if I have time, I'll get to it. But if you took away my inbox and said, okay, go resubscribe to all the newsletters you want, you can remember, I'd probably only have, the company's, mine, and then these 3 others, and that would be it.
I can think of one off the top of my head
that you like and you get. Is it? And because that's very interesting, that goes into reading behavior, because I know the ones you love, there are newsletters like as soon as they come in the box, you read them and you hit them. But there's others that usually pile up, and like I know on some Mondays I'm like, yeah, no, let's just delete all these because I need to get my email box back in shape. And there's other ones where you'll stack up 4 or 5, and that's what you're talking about with, don't be afraid to share a link across multiple issues of it, because maybe they're only reading every third one, or they're doing the high speed scroll. And so, taking all that into your reading account is a big deal. And knowing the half-life too, do look at your half-life as far as, when those go out, how fast are they opened? And do you have a spike around weekends or holidays? Like, try and get a feel for when the stuff actually gets read, because you may find that, a lot of the trickery or stuff that you're doing is just not worth taking the time, because, it doesn't have to go out at 4 p.m. on Thursday, because, stuff is just distributed so widely. It really doesn't matter.
Exactly. And another trick I think is really helpful for creating that in sort of engaging content. If you back to Brian's question, if you're not sure what to put in, go to Twitter, right? Now this is an expert from Twitter's API, but you can do this just in Twitter itself. and go to the hashtag of the topic or industry that you're focusing on. And for a lot of companies, Twitter will be the right choice. Some companies, maybe Instagram will be the right choice. Some companies, obviously, there really is no digital footprint. But so this is the last day's worth of tweets. This is from my pandemic newsletter. So I look at last 50-ish tweets from a specific list of credible authors, not just any monkey. These are all people with multiple, doctorates. And I just look through and see, okay, what are the most engaging pieces of content that these credible experts have shared? And that's what goes in my newsletter, my daily newsletter, because I don't really write it. I just copy and paste a lot of stuff, the things that I think are important. And from a strategy perspective, if you need to create a newsletter that's valuable, look for the stuff that other people have already identified as valuable. You have credible sources, you have their content, and you just, you cite them appropriately. You follow all the publication rules, and you share it. And of all of the newsletters I publish, that one has the highest readership rate. It is a 56% open rate. And it is just absolutely insane because, well, unfortunately, it's highly relevant, and it's about something that's, people are correctly very worried about. But it's valuable content. When you read it, and the value I add, besides putting it together, is saying, okay, well, here's the things I think we should be doing more of, or these things we should be doing less of. Do the same thing for your industry, whatever it is. If you're in higher education, take in your top 50 or 100 higher ed leaders on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. Look at the top performing content, and then start putting that into your newsletters. That's, when we started the Trust Insights newsletter, there was actually a lot more curated content because that was what we had at the time. And then as we've matured, the balance has changed. But in the beginning, it was a big pile of links.
Because you got to start somewhere. And again, it's fine to have the newsletter evolve over time. You don't have to change everything all at once. Change one thing once a month, but be sure you're testing things. Be sure you're tracking things appropriately so that you can, look at the results and test things and remove things and add things. And, to Chris's point, ask people what they want and give them what they want, because that's really the whole point. And if you're John and you live in a fear-based organization, don't do any of it.
Just steal the office supplies and pray for the best.
See you leaving with rolls of paper towels.
The industrial sized ones.
If you want to subscribe to the Trust Insights newsletter, we've made it pretty easy for you. It's trustinsights.ai/newsletter. You get content from myself and from Chris every single week, written by us, our little fingers typing on the keyboards with some original content. And also you get curated links of articles that we think are important for you, and also just some news about what we're doing.
Exactly right. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Any final thoughts?
If anybody's got great newsletters, throw them out. We always love to hear, other stuff that's out there. If there's anything exciting, I would also throw Martech out there, because it's not just Arnold Schwarzenegger all the time here.
It's 100% not Arnold Schwarzenegger anytime here.
It's a 0% Schwarzenegger home.
I don't know. 2 out of 3 of us get Arnold's newsletter. So
yeah, but I'm the decision maker.
It's bias. That's bias in action.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
We'll be back.
Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and our weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.